How do you know? Oh, no.
Oh, so now it's a green light. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Right, so that was like a rough draft. Okay. All right. So, can you please state your name, where you go to school or where you went to school, and your experience in education, please?
My name is Vanessa Quiroga. I am currently a senior at Stanford University, planning to graduate soon with a major in management science and engineering.
So, what's your experience in education so far?
So freshman year, I was involved in a volunteer program working at East Palo Alto Elementary Schools, just volunteering once a week with kids in the area. And then for the last 3 years, I've been involved in an after-school math program called Think Math. So it's basically a program where we teach a Singaporean math curriculum to elementary school students in the schools in the area. And so we put students in small groups of 5 students per instructor, and it's completely Stanford run. All the instructors are Stanford students. And I started off as an instructor, so making lesson plans, teaching a small group of students, and watching them progress through the curriculum. And then I moved up to a team lead position where I oversee a school site, manage the instructors, make sure the students are placed in the right groups, and interact a lot with the parents.
Excellent. And so do you have any plans immediately or long-term afterwards involved in education?
So for right now, in the short term, I don't plan on getting involved in education right away. However, one of my dreams and one of my passions is going back to Bolivia, where I'm from, and starting some kind of nonprofit organization that has to do with early childhood education. Education's always been a really big problem in Bolivia, so that's something that I can hope to change in the future.
Okay. And what was your passion that brought you into doing, education, since basically you were a freshman here at Stanford?
So my mom's been an elementary school teacher my whole life, and so I've kind of grown up with that, and I've just learned a lot about the influence of really good teachers and how they can really impact somebody. And also, as I said before, being from Bolivia, I've gone with my mom to volunteer at several different schools or hospitals, and you can see the lack of education that exists and the difference that good education can make in somebody's life, and the opportunities that it can give them, the doors that it can open for them. And so I'm a really big believer that education is one of the main solutions to poverty, and even health concerns and things like that. So I think that that's probably something that really motivates me. And I also just love kids and working with kids, so it's always been something fun to do as well.
Cool. All right. So then I'm going to ask you 4 more questions that really dive into the purpose of our presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So and also I'd like for you to answer as best as possible from your background, from Bolivia,
mm-hmm.
and your mom being a teacher, and maybe the disparities that you see from EPA since you work there,
mm-hmm.
and also Duveneck or
yeah.
White Oaks, right? So do you see your classroom as diverse typically, or in your experience?
Okay, so I feel like classrooms aren't very diverse, and maybe once you're in a certain school, you'll think that it's diverse, especially in schools in Palo Alto or the Menlo Park districts. You'll see that there's language immersion classes where students are learning Spanish and English simultaneously. There's people from a lot of different backgrounds, you'll have people whose parents are from somewhere in South America, whose parents are from somewhere in Asia. So in that sense, there's a lot of diversity, but I feel like overall, there isn't, and you can really tell the difference when you go from a school like East Palo Alto to a school in Palo Alto, and you can really tell that the backgrounds that these students come from are drastically different, and the homes that they grow up in are very different as well. And so I think that in that sense, there's not a lot of diversity, and you can really tell how it impacts the way that they learn and the pace at which they learn, the opportunities that they're given. So I feel like maybe diversity wouldn't be the best way to explain it, but you can see that there's a lot of disparity.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And does classroom diversity, or in your case, you see both sides as classroom diversity, but also lack of classroom diversity, how does that affect your teaching specifically?
I think that you have to, being from Bolivia, where I've seen a lot of really poor people who would give anything for a good education. So for me, going to a school in Palo Alto, it's kind of hard to understand, to find a different way to motivate people. To be like, instead of saying, you know, if you work hard, then you'll have many opportunities open to you, that isn't always as motivating as it is when you say that to a student in Bolivia. So sometimes you have to find different ways to motivate students. You have to find kind of what's meaningful to them and use that to motivate them. So I think that diversity in a classroom could be, if there were more diversity in classrooms, it could be really helpful because it can help open students' eyes to the reality of other people.
Wow, that's actually a perfect segue into like the third question, which is, do you consider teaching in a racially, ethnically, and or linguistically diverse environment a benefit or detriment to students?
I think it's definitely a benefit.
Okay.
I think that at first it can be hard to get these two groups to kind of come together. For example, bringing students from East Palo Alto together with students from Palo Alto. It could be hard because of kind of the difference in the learning curve and the speed at which the students learn. But if there's a program that can successfully bring them together, it has to be well thought out and well made, that it can be really, really beneficial. It can, I don't know, I think what I've learned a lot from just surrounding myself with different people from different backgrounds. You can learn so much about yourself, about different cultures and things like that. So I think that it's really something that should be worked on.
Okay, awesome. And the last question I have is, for racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse teaching environments, is there a need for a different pedagogical approach or different pedagogical approaches?
Yeah, I definitely think that there has to be a different approach. As I said before, it's going to be hard to bring those two groups together, mainly because of the learning disparity. And so there does have to be a different approach. There has to be also more of an effort to make sure that even though students are in the same classroom, that they don't kind of separate themselves into their own, like, well, you're from the rich neighborhood and you're from the poor neighborhood, so we kind of like separate themselves. Right. So I think there has to be a conscious effort to keep that from happening. There also has to be different approaches to like homework assignment, for example, because there are some students whose parents are with them all the time who will help them with the homework, will stay on them, make sure that they're getting their work done and help them progress. At the same time, there are other students whose parents are totally uninvolved in their lives, or who don't have tutors, or who don't have nannies or things like that. And so understanding that and figuring out how to manage that and make sure that all students have an equal opportunity to learn the material is very important. If not, then you're going to have one group falling behind the other constantly.
Nice. All right. So that's all of my questions, but I have like a bonus small question.
Yep.
Like long term, like, because I actually just genuinely want to see like how you feel in your experience. Like, do you see like any long term solutions that you could think of to maybe like bridge that gap in disparities? Like, is it finances? Is it resources? Is it more like programs like Think Math? You know, is it like more like free programs? Like, what do you feel is like your perfect formula to like help get the ball rolling and like minimizing that disparity?
I think that's a really, really hard question, because right now, as the public school system is set up, it's really hard to do. So what you'd have to do is kind of just change the way that students are assigned to public schools. Right. And of course, that's not going to make a lot of parents very happy. Right. And so I think that's a really hard question. I think that kind of the government needs to get involved there, and kind of there needs to be more of a movement to get more equality across the board with education. But I think that something that would be a cool program to see is just kind of like maybe a pen pal kind of thing, or a buddy system, but not necessarily with older kids and younger kids, or with somebody in a different country, but with kids from like East Palo Alto and Palo Alto. Bring them together in some way, in some program, so that they can get to know each other and get to understand each other, and then maybe slowly then they can just come closer together and teach each other. And I don't know, maybe it won't be such a foreign thing for a kid from East Palo Alto to see a kid from Palo Alto, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really hard question. It's something that definitely needs to be worked on. But that might be a starting point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really
No
appreciate
problem.
it. Thank you.
Good luck for New Year.
Thank you. Yeah. It'll probably be a